The bell tolls. The midnight hour is upon us. It's time once again for two internet strangers to discuss the good and evil of the horror genre. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the terror within the Hallow-Holics Anonymous podcast.
Attacks us with nuclear weapons. Danger will come not just from blast or heat or nearby radiation effect, but also from fallout. Fallout, which may occur miles and miles away from the blast. You need to know about fallout.
Please pass the canned peaches.
Boston baked beans?
Well, I sure am glad you two made it down here before that there nuclear fallout hit. Sure betcha it looks like gray snow by now. All them mutants will be banging on the bunker door any minute.
I'm pretty sure that's not how it works, Corey's uncle.
Please, call me Sally. I ever tell you about the time I mud-rassled Nancy Reagan?
I think I'd rather deal with the radiation poisoning outside than spend another day down here.
What can we do? My uncle's the only doomsday prepper I knew. Don't worry, though. You'll get used to the smell. Honestly, I think the tinfoil sneakers are pretty cool.
She was a biter.
Why don't we do the podcast to pass the time?
Sounds good to me.
Hi, I'm Maddy.
And I'm Corey.
And I'm...
Shh! You're not part of this in-between skit.
Oh, sorry. Guess I'll just focus on my whittling.
This is Hallow-Holics Anonymous, a show about all things horror and occasionally Halloween.
You can do the voice now.
What voice?
On this day in horror history.
Oh. On this day in horror... How did I do it last time?
You did an echo.
Oh, wait, there was this. All right. I didn't keep my settings. On this day in horror history.
30 years ago, on August 19th, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master was released.
And that was this day in horror history.
Pretty,
I don't know.
Pretty slim day for horror on that one. So, as we said before, we're gonna mess around with the format, guys. This week, instead of the, pre-memorial Suddenly Seeking Stephen death game, we're going to do the Suddenly Seeking Stephen, because I still want this to be about Stephen. Is that okay?
Oh, I don't care. It's fine with me.
Oh, you don't care about finding Stephen anymore?
Well, I do, but...
Well, anyway. This week, our game is Suddenly Seeking Stephen 5 Survival Weapons for the Nuclear Apocalypse, in which each of us pick the 5 most important weapons to have to defend yourself from nuclear fallout and or mutants, your nuclear World War III Holocaust of choice.
How do you choose? They're all so great.
That's exactly why my first choice is bug spray. I feel like it encompasses most, if not all, problems when it comes to gigantic mutant bugs. And if it's Raid, well, it can take on the roaches too.
Mine are going to be so much more violent than yours.
No, want to bet? All right, what's your first weapon?
I would definitely start with a machete. Like a very well-made, decent machete, because you can clear brush, prepare food, kill other people and take their food, torture people if necessary. It's perfect.
Now, are we doing this in a bunker setting? Because it's going to be difficult to do all that and dispose of all the bodies.
Well, we're eating them.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I mean, that creates a different kind of issue, but we can look to that one later.
Yeah. Dude, the minute that something like this happens and the chains of society's expectations have been cast off of me, I will become a very different person. Cannibalism is probably the least terrible thing I will do.
With that in mind, my second survival weapon is the anti-survival weapon, a vial of poison of some sort, probably arsenic, because I believe it's odorless and tasteless. I can have one nice cup of tea before going to bed and never have to worry about the nuclear apocalypse again.
Yeah, as long as I don't have to watch you die. Poison deaths are terrible. I accidentally watched this YouTube video of some dude who drank poison right before, or like right after he was sentenced in the courtroom, and he died right there, and he made terrible, terrible noises.
Okay.
I don't want to hear you make those noises.
Well, you can just, I guess, get your machete ready if the noises bother you that much.
Or you can just do it in your room. I'll just find you later.
Gosh, this is a nice bunker.
I wonder, does that taint your meat, though? Would I be able to cook arsenic out?
Well, I mean, if I die really fast, I can't imagine it would spread to all of the muscles.
That's true. I'll have to look into that.
Okay, what's your second weapon of choice?
All right, next. So we're assuming we're in a bunker. We're not out wandering the wastelands yet?
For this one, let's...
Or both?
You know what? Let's encompass all situations.
All situations?
All situations.
All right. Then my second piece of equipment would be a bicycle.
Okay, how is that a weapon? Because this is supposed to be weapons.
Well, you had bug spray.
That's a weapon against gigantic bugs.
A bike can be a weapon. You can pick it up and hit people with it.
Is that the main purpose of your bike?
No, it's because a bike can go anywhere. It can get anywhere it needs to go. Much better than a car. It doesn't take gas.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, how about a bike with spikes attached to the front so I can ram stuff with it?
Okay, so you're thinking of a weird kind of budget brand Mad Max bike now?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, well, my third weapon would be the Bible. No, bear with me. A family Bible, so it's large and cumbersome. I can hurt people with it if I need to, and knowledge is power. I could rule the world with that Bible.
I just feel like if you beat someone to death with a Bible, though, that's probably a problem.
Well, I'll just use the Old Testament. Jesus won't get mad.
That's true. That's kind of what the Old Testament's for. All right.
Suddenly, in the middle of recording, Corey and Madeline were struck down.
All right. Third thing. I would pick some sort of black powder revolver. In fact, I already own it, so it's fine.
Oh.
Black powder's good because you don't have to find bullets. You can make your own little balls for it. All that you have to do is have gunpowder, which is pretty cheap, and I already have a nice stockpile of it, so.
Moving on to my fourth weapon here. A solar-powered nail gun, because those things are scary. And I can build stuff with it while I'm defending myself.
I'm not sure that you need a solar-powered one, because those are just powered by compressed air.
Yes, but, I mean, you have to eventually stock up on more compressed air, right? I know all sorts of things about power tools.
All right, I'll give you that, but I imagine it would be a good weapon, regardless of how you're powering it.
Yeah, I'm just saying green energy might be a useful thing to incorporate into your survival weapons for the nuclear apocalypse.
No, true.
I mean, we've already done enough to the world at this point.
Oh, no doubt.
In this scenario.
All right, so again, I'm going to go with something multi-use, and I'm going to say one of those fire axes that have a spike on one end and like an axe on the other end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that way I can smash us out of situations, smash people out of their lives.
And if you need
smash
a fire
my way.
extinguisher, yeah.
Well, there's no fire extinguisher on a fire axe. It's just an axe with a spike on it.
Yeah, but you can break open one of those glass things.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But we can also break into people's houses with it to steal all their stuff and cannibalize them. It's perfect.
Okay, I feel like you're trying to incorporate cannibalizing in scenarios that maybe don't require it. I feel like you really, really want to do the cannibal bit, and it kind of concerns me.
I just know we need to, and I'm prepared for it. It's important to be prepared for these things.
And on that note, I will keep a rape whistle for my fifth weapon.
Okay, but for, like, against me for like eating you? I'm not going to eat you unless you're dead. You're on my team, or unless you end up being useless.
Yeah, but if you get that certain twinkle in your eye, I'm not going to take my chances. I want a rape whistle.
Who's going to come save you in the bunker? And this is, I'm a little creeped out now because it's making me feel rapey. Listeners, we're specifically, this rape whistle is for cannibalism, not for rape. So it's technically an anti-cannibalism whistle, but my point still stands. If you blow that whistle in the bunker or out in the wasteland, A, nobody's coming to save you.
And B, it will really hurt your ears, so you'll at least be distracted long enough to stop pouring A3 on my arm.
Fair enough. And C, somebody's going to hear that, and they're going to come running, and we're going to have to kill other people. So we're good. Then I can just cannibalize them, and you get to live another... I don't know. How long do you think we can make a person last?
Well, meat goes bad in a few days, especially if you don't have refrigeration.
Well, we can make dude jerky, though.
Gosh, you're assuming we have a lot of resources.
Well, jerky, you don't need much. You just salt that and...
Well, how do we know we have that much salt?
Oh, I don't know.
You didn't use salt as one of your weapons. You didn't even pick saltpeter.
Salt's not a weapon. It's just stuff that's around.
It can be deadly.
I will get salt. I have a fire axe, machete, black powder revolver. I will find... And a bicycle with spikes on it. I will find salt.
Just picturing you with all of these accessories.
Oh, it's my turn.
Yes, for the last survival weapon.
Oh, my last weapon. Do I need a sword? I have a sword.
And a machete, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm good on edge weapons. And I have... You know what? I need a bow and arrow just in case my
Do you know how to shoot a bow and arrow?
Of course I do. I run a summer camp.
I thought you were going to say, I'm a hipster. Of course I do.
Yeah, but I wouldn't do... Yeah, I mean, I've got one sitting on the other side of my room right now. It's an old recurve. Which brings me to my next point. I wouldn't take any of those fancy compound bows or anything because they're too difficult to restring, and eventually I won't be able to find strings for them potentially. But if I go for an old recurve style bow, there's still a lot of power behind them. And if I have to, I can make my own string out of the guts of the people we cannibalize because that's the original bowstrings were essentially guts. Same with upright bass strings. They're originally rabbit guts, I think.
With that being said, joking aside, nuclear war is the closest to hell this world might ever come. The dropping of the atomic bombs in Japan were a very close second. When I think of this sort of warfare, I'm reminded of the famous photograph taken by Kenichi Kimura of the woman with the thermal print of her dress burnt into her skin. I think of a chilling monologue by Viggo Mortensen in The Reflecting Skin where his character describes watching the bombs drop at a not-too-safe distance. I think of antiseptic educational films that used to tell kids they'd be safe under their desks with illustrative diagrams and cartoons explaining the proper techniques to avoiding a nuclear bomb. As an American, and especially a millennial, I've never known that sleeping fear of Cold War. I've never known what it was like to picture mushroom clouds just over the horizon because someone decided to act first and think later. Movies like Threads are a disturbing reminder that one should never wish for nuclear war, and no one should ever want to survive one either.
And movies like A Boy and His Dog make it look kind of fun sometimes, depending who you are. No, honestly, you say you're not afraid of the whole Cold War. You don't know that fear. But that fear, I mean, that's happening right now. This whole Korea stuff, this Russia stuff, it's all creeping back. I really think we're closer to, at least we're getting closer to nukes again. Mm-hmm. No, I'm not saying this isn't the 80s. This isn't like everybody's finger on a button type thing yet, but...
We're certainly getting close to the dismissive behavior that amped it up in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we have at least 3 different countries, ourselves included, so 2 countries other than us, that are hovering that button, man. Like, yeah, it's scary. It's a scary time, and I think that... Well, I don't want to get into it too much, but I think your movie really reflects the build-up very well. And, but we'll cross that bridge when it's burning.
And just to tell, I don't know how to say this, just to maybe put you into that mindset, here's a joke made by President Reagan when he didn't realize the cameras were rolling.
I already know what this is, but go ahead.
My fellow Americans, I'm pleased to tell you today that I've signed legislation that will outlaw Russia forever. We begin bombing in 5 minutes.
Jesus, Reagan.
You know what?
We'll outlaw Russia. Right. I mean, honestly, yeah, he's joking, but they were all about that kind of stuff. It's like us in Korea right now. Yeah. North Korea, excuse me, South Koreans that are probably not listening to this podcast.
Yeah, and to your point that maybe we are kind of edging our way back to that sort of mindset. I think this is a good time for nuclear war movies to make a comeback, especially with things like rampant Russian hacking, or at least the rampant reporting of it. You never know what news is real or not anymore, whether you're watching videos or reading articles. And all of the Antifa groups popping up.
Yeah.
Just everybody's angry. And when everybody's angry, they start acting more and thinking less.
Yeah, especially when Mad Max Fury Road was released, this is a little... I mean, Korea was still being threatening, and Russia was still doing their thing. Mm-hmm. Fury Road came out a little bit before that. But, I mean, that movie's based in the fear of nukes, all the movies that came before, Road Warrior, Mad Max, all that stuff. That's all about society falling apart once the bombs drop. And
your movie really established that tone, too. That inspired stuff like Mad Max.
Yeah, very true. And we are kind of getting some movies. They're mostly more independent, like The Bad Batch. I don't know if you've watched that. I haven't finished it yet, but it's pretty good. And it's got Jason Momoa in it. So that's kind of awesome. But yeah, I think we're getting some. We're just not getting these big budget, I suppose, nuke movies right now. We're not getting any Thursday evening, the day after type things yet. Mm-hmm. We're not getting Threads yet, but who knows? Let's see how bad things get. Maybe we will.
Honestly, and edging towards our films now, I think Threads is so disturbing that you don't really need a reimagining of it. They should just play that movie again on TV, maybe remastered, but...
So are we doing Coffin Box? Or do you just want to keep going?
Yes, we are. We are doing Coffin Box before we launch into the film.
All right.
Just to lighten things up before we bring it way down all over again.
Yeah. So I have received I believe it's every 3 months I get a Coffin Box. This is different from the Horror Pack, listeners, because Horror Pack comes once a month and it's Blu-ray. Or DVD if you want to get that. This is every 3 months, every 2 months, I forget exactly, but it's a box full of horror stuff, and it always has the newest episode of Rue Morgue magazine in it, which I have jury duty tomorrow. So I'm going to take my copy of Rue Morgue magazine because it's got a bunch of articles on Halloween and the new Halloween and all that stuff. So I'm going to read it while I'm waiting. That might get me out of jury duty. We'll see. All right, so let's get into this box. There will be pictures of this up on our blog eventually, but I've been wearing the t-shirt for like 3 days straight, and I just washed it. It's hanging up to dry, so I'll take pictures as soon as it's done drying. I'm gonna save your thing for last. Well, I'm not giving it to you, but the thing that's gonna make you the most jealous.
Oh boy, I'm gonna get mad at you. I just know it.
You might. Okay, so the first thing I got, and I forgot to look this up. I think this is from a movie called Frankenstein Created Bunkers.
Oh.
Sorry, let me say that again. So this first thing is from a movie called Frankenstein Created Bikers by James Bickert. I don't know. That's who directed it.
Somewhat more disappointing.
Yeah. So this is a little like baseball card, trading card, bounty hunter card about a dude named Willie. Looks like he has a survival knife for a hand. His name might be Willie the Stump. Let's go with that. And it's signed by James Bickert. So I'm going to have to check out this movie and see what's up with it. All right. Ugh. Sorry, I spilled everything. All right, next up, let's do the magazine. Oh, it looks like it's a big article on the Halloween that's coming out soon, the newest one, which I'm super excited for. I'm a little disappointed that they retconned Halloween 2. Because I thought Halloween 2 was a great movie.
Yeah, but
I'll take it. Yeah, especially I really want to see what Danny McBride's going to do with something that isn't stoner comedy.
Well, now that they're no longer brother and sister, that tension's back.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Speak of the devil, my horror pack just got shipped.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. All right, so next up is the Blu-ray. You're always promised a Blu-ray in this pile of stuff. This pile of stuff, this box, I got Train to Busan, which if you haven't seen it, is actually pretty fantastic.
It is. Oh my gosh, that one is so good.
Yeah, I feel a little dead inside though, because everybody was like, oh, you gotta watch Train to Busan, it breathes life in zombie movies again. In the end's gonna tear you apart. Yeah, the end's sad, but, it didn't really, I didn't shed a tear. Let's not ruin it, because it's pretty new, and I think a lot of people haven't seen it.
I cried.
Really? Well,
yeah, but what I loved is it really wasn't about the zombies. That's
true. That was
good writing.
And that's usually, how I like my zombie movies. I like them to be about the people rather than the monsters. All right.
Unless it's Frankenstein, in which case it's kind of a combination.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So you also get a t-shirt in all these boxes. This box's t-shirt is dope. Last box, if you remember, I got like a Frankenstein on the table, kind of green on black thing. Mm-hmm. This one is it's kind of Halloween themed, but not really. So I got a Halloween t-shirt. It's got Michael Myers' mask on the front, and then below it, it's got 2 crossed butcher knives, one with blood all over it. It's super sweet. I wore that for like 3 days last week.
Nice.
And finally, the piece that's going to make you jealous. I haven't opened it yet, and I'm going to. This dude needs to like hang out on my desk forever. They sent me Blade from the Puppet Master, like a mini action figure.
What?
He is so sweet, dude.
Oh my God.
He is like maybe 2.5, 3 inches tall, just so tiny.
I do hate you. You're right. I hate you so much.
Yeah. Before I open them, I'll take pictures, and I'll send you a picture for the blog of the front and the back of the box.
You know, Coffin Box, if you'd like to sponsor us, please send me stuff.
Yeah, for sure, Coffin Box. I don't mind paying for it, but yeah, give us more stuff. So far you guys have been killing it, and I hope you keep it up.
I love that we assume these things that we buy are actually listening to our show.
Seriously. Well, it's good to hope. You know, yeah. It's good to be positive. Mm-hmm. All right, and that is this month's Coffin Box. It looks like next episode we record will be a Horror Pack episode. So
pretty sweet.
Yeah, if you guys haven't noticed, we're like editing these and getting them out pretty late. So
yeah, we are so behind.
Yeah. I only have one little bit of news today. It is something I mentioned.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Okay, now you can say it.
Why did I have to wait?
Well, you had to give room for me to laugh and tell people about horror news. Come on, man.
Oh, my bad. Insert clip.
No, we already inserted it, sir. After I make a pause.
All right. Always, I'm not even, no innuendo. I'm going to behave.
Yeah,
all
good.
Right. So, the only little bit of news I have today is that the Vampire Diaries and the original spin-off Legacies is premiering on October 25th of this year. The reason I'm so excited for it is because I just finished the originals, which finished perfectly. It was so good, and it was so touching, and I actually shed a tear. But that's all I'm going to say. You guys all need to watch it. Matthew Davis is back as Alaric Saltzman, who is one of the best characters in the Vampire Diaries. I'm pretty excited for that. I don't see anything about Caroline, unfortunately. Her twins are in it, but she's not. And oddly enough, Jeremy Gilbert, Elena's little brother, is coming back for it. So October 25th. We're not done with that world yet. I'm very happy.
All right. With that being said, I think it is time to launch into my film.
Yes, ma'am.
So for this episode, I decided to pick Threads from 1984, a fantastic British film.
The United States government has been forced, reluctantly, to take action to safeguard what it believes are legitimate Western interests in the Middle East. We are confident that the Soviet Union will take note of our resolve and will desist from its present perilous course of action.
There's growing evidence overnight from scientists and observers in many countries that there have been 2 nuclear explosions in the Middle East.
In response to today's news of the outbreak of hostilities between vessels of the United States and Soviet navies,
the Ministry of Defense has announced it's sending more troops to Europe to reinforce the British commitment to NATO.
This time, they are playing with, at best, the destruction of life as we know it, and at worst, total annihilation. You cannot win a nuclear war!
now come to make everything ready for you and your family in case an air attack happens. When you hear the attack warning, you and your family must take cover at once. The most widespread danger is fallout.
Quite good.
Attack warning.
Attack warning? Is it for real? Attack warning? It's for bloody real. Is it?
You can't just do a face like that. Go get a titty sign or something. Come on, quick, get down.
In the United Kingdom, Threads is almost episodic in its treatment of what might happen if nuclear war ever broke out. From the government reaction to the physical devastation to the immediate disintegration of society in its wake. This is not a hopeful movie. It is brutal. It is sometimes painful to watch. It is a stark reminder how relevant this quote from an old Chinese story will always ring. Truly better be a dog in days of peace than a human in times of war.
I made some sort of funny joke there yesterday, and I don't remember it today, so it must not have been that funny. Yeah, it would kind of suck to be... No, I'm not going to do it. Fuck it. We'll talk about the animals later.
Pardoning the laughter, there is a lot to unwrap in this movie. So, to begin with, it's sort of a remake of the faux documentary The War Game from 1965, which wasn't aired upon its release because it was considered too brutal for audiences and might cause a rash of suicides across the country. The main difference is that this one folds in stories of individuals to go with the events, making it that much more powerful. This is essentially the British counterpart to The Day After as well, which is also an excellent film, but I don't think it's quite as good as this one.
I'm going to have to go back and watch it. I remember when, because I'm very old, I remember when that movie aired, and I remember my mom especially. I mean, it was before I realized that moms freak out about everything. But I remember my mom being very, very uncomfortable after watching that. And I asked, I'd have to look up the year it was released to actually remember how old I was. But I was old. 80 what?
83.
83. So I was 6, maybe 7. But I was old enough to ask questions about it. I don't remember watching any of it, but I remember asking, and I may not have watched all of it, because I remember asking innocently as a child, I'm like, why didn't they just rebuild everything, Mom? And I remember her saying something to the effect of like, well, they tried to, but it was too late, or something very cryptic and dark. Like, that's a memory I have from my childhood.
The main thing I remember is a redheaded girl getting away from her family and then towards the end losing all her hair because of radiation poisoning, and Jason Robard losing all of his hair because of radiation poisoning. It's the only thing I remember.
My man's in everything. Jason Robards is in everything.
And he deserves to be, sir.
Oh, he really does. He's great.
Like, I straight up had a crush on him when I was 12 years old.
I have a crush on him now, which is kind of gross, but...
He was terrible in Dream a Little Dream, but...
You take that back right now. I'm not kidding. The fate of the podcast depends on you not talking shit on Dream a Little Dream.
Oh my god, you like that movie?
I love Dream a Little Dream. You don't understand.
It's so hard.
It does. It's the perfect little. It's this strange. It's so original for what it is. Like, you can look at it as this crappy movie that tries too hard, or you can see it as this weird series of conversations sort of woven together into the narrative. And that's really what it is. Like, it's just separate conversations edited together to make this movie. And yeah, the storyline's not great. The love story's kind of cheesy, but the way I've just never seen a movie that was filmed quite like Dream a Little Dream, and I really liked it. Now the sequel is terrible. Magic sunglasses, terrible.
What you mean? Corey doing a Michael Jackson impression and releasing an album doesn't make that movie absolutely award-winning?
That happens in the second one?
He does a Michael Jackson thing with glasses and a hat because they mind control him. It's stupid.
Yeah, he kind of does a Michael Jackson thing a little bit in the first one too, yeah. But we are way off topic. I'm sorry I got so angry, but Dream a Little Dream really is one of my favorite movies.
No, let's unwrap this before we continue on the threads, because I have a lot to say about Dream a Little Dream.
All right.
First of all, the only good part about that movie is the opening, where Corey and Corey are having a conversation. That's the only good part about that movie. And what pisses me off is that part is so good that the fact that I even made myself watch another hour and a half of it drove me insane. That movie reminded me of all of the baby boomer books you see used at the dollar store or Goodwill about transcendentalism and meditation. It's a dumb movie, Corey.
No. There's if we're talking good scenes, there's another great scene with I forget what that song's called. It's that Blue Jean Baby Queen, Prettiest Girl I've Ever Seen. What's that called? I don't know. Anyway, it's they're playing that song and they're all like kind of getting ready to go face what fate has in store for them. It's just the perfect scene. It's so good. I can't believe you don't like that movie.
Oh God.
It's so good.
It's so not.
I mean, it's not the best movie involving the Coreys. That would, of course, be The Lost Boys, but it's up there for me.
I thought you were going to say it was the License to Drive.
No, License to Drive is pretty great, too, though.
Anyway, back to Threads.
All right, yeah.
I think the narrative structure of it is really, really interesting. The news approach these days in movies is too polished and heavy-handed. But in this film, it is interwoven so perfectly with all of the scenes. On the car radios, in bars, on a handheld radio when a character is tending his birds, when a little girl is doing her homework. There are a few moments when the news isn't there, just scratching at the surface.
Yeah, I really like the way they did that, and I also like the way that they sort of twined the documentary style of explaining what's happening. You know, it would cut to that jarring typewriter sound and then the words coming across the screen. Mm-hmm. And I love that because you're watching just this tension build between these people because everybody going into this movie knows what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And it's that build-up and that apprehension that just makes it so tense up until you get to the terrible stuff. And then that's halfway through. But this whole time strewed about, you have this very saccharine sort of narration about what's happening that like pulls you out of it and tells you exactly what's going on in this very objective robotic way, and it just added to the horror for me. So good.
No, especially when they intersperse clips from when they cut in clips of Protect and Survive, which was a series produced by the BBC, and the one that stood out the most to me was the almost antiseptic way they presented of how to store and dispose of a body.
Yeah, I like the way they did that too. That was such a dark moment too. And the fact that like the guys doing it were so preoccupied with everything else that they're just like, bring us another bin liner. Mm-hmm. Oh, it was so strange.
Now, the director, Mick Jackson, did a lot of research on this subject before he even hired the scriptwriter, Barry Hines. He spent like at least a year interviewing experts, scientists, doctors, psychologists, you name it. He wanted to treat this subject matter respectfully and realistically. And I think they did an admirable job. I could believe everything that was happening in this story.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm obviously not a nuclear physicist, but it all, and I anytime you watch something about, nuclear warfare, you compare it to the atomic bombs that were dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Mm-hmm. And I know that the megatonnage on those was nowhere near what would have hit Sheffield in this movie. Like, I think it said that they got hit with, 210 megatons out of the 3,000 megatons that America and Russia were throwing around. Mm-hmm. So that was... then that's another thing that terrified me. Imagine how much worse off we were. And the world in general. That's 3,000 megatons going both ways. 6,000 total.
Well, this is actually a point my dad likes to make often, is that we're kind of, me personally, my family, we're all kind of near ground zero. Like, Randolph Air Force Base is a pretty big deal. So he's confident we would all die immediately. And,
yeah. There's a good chance that we're a target too, because a lot of our power plants supply power to a lot of the eastern United States, as far as I know. So we would probably get hit at least in the second or third wave, I'd imagine.
So this is something I actually didn't notice until my rewatch of the film, when I had time to kind of slow down and appreciate it a bit more. But The film begins with the couple, Jimmy and Ruth, talking about living in the country. Jimmy thinks it would be boring, but Ruth appreciates the beauty and the fresh air. And then at the end, when Ruth is nearly dead, she's been blinded by her gradual poisoning from radiation. The sun has come back. The country sun she romanticized about in the beginning of the film, and she turns her head up as if to see it, and she sees nothing.
Oh, are we spoiling the end of this one?
Yes, we are, because I just did.
Okay, that's what I figured. And the kid, that kid trying to get her to get out of bed and work. I mean, the kid was obviously very mentally disabled because of the radiation exposure as a fetus.
Uh-huh. And the narrative even pointed out that there would be a lot of that.
Yeah. And that was the whole end of that movie, was just these gang of disabled children
with their own sort of primitive language, too.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Although I'm not sure, I feel like that might have been pushing it a little bit, because they made it pretty clear that there were people watching over them too, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that maybe they would have had a little bit better of a grasp of the English language. I think that they were maybe pushing, and this is me being someone who works with the disabled right now. I feel like they were maybe pushing the stereotype of a disabled person rather than doing it right for sort of, and I mean, it needed to be a shocking movie, but I feel like that they didn't need to push that for the shock value, you know?
The way I see it, given what the world has become, you can only afford time to care for the disabled when you're living in a world where people can eat every day, a world where people aren't affected by a horrible tragedy and bombings and worried about even surviving to the next day. These are the leftovers, the kids that nobody cares about. They're all orphans and they're practically adults. I think it makes sense that no one would care enough to teach them, really. I mean, the only education you saw was a broken video in the orphanage, so talking about skeletons.
Yeah, but that's kind of what I thought too. I thought, like, if there are a few of adults that care enough to show, and I'm not speaking about every child in England as a whole, I'm just speaking about these specific kids. If there are adults that care enough to show them these educational skeleton movies, whatever, that they probably care enough to teach them too. That was really the only part I had a problem with, except for the first birth. Mm-hmm. That was a little weird for me, because she goes off into the barn, and I don't know if it was a defense mechanism or if it was just late at night or what, but I could not get away in the manger out of my head during that scene. Oh, it was insane. And that added to it, because then that made me super uncomfortable thinking about that, watching this scene, knowing what happened and knowing what's going to happen to this kid. It was crazy.
Well, maybe that was some intentional symbolism, a sort of anti-Christ moment, if you will.
I feel like you can't pop out a kid in a barn and not have it relate to Christ. I feel like that's kind of, if that scene happens, it's done on purpose.
I thought you were going to say, end your sentence at barn, and I wanted to say something like, well, you've never been to Poland. But, first, I've never been to Poland.
Are a lot of babies birthed in barns in Poland?
I'd like to think they are.
Oh, okay.
Now we've completely alienated our Polish listeners.
I'm Polish, so it's okay. I'm partially Polish.
Oh, you're a Polak, huh?
I am a smattering of Eastern European. I am everything. You can actually, my sister got her DNA thing done, and you can actually see where we started as Vikings and like raped, pillaged our way down to where we are now. You can actually watch the genetic, you can actually watch our genes spread. It was actually very interesting.
You're kind of a little bit the opposite of me. Mine was so disappointing. This is a little off topic, but it was like, 60-something% English. I don't know. Yeah, there's some Welsh in there too. I mean, it's the same thing. And some Irish, and there's a little bit of Swedish, but not much. And that was pretty much my DNA result. I was like, that is the whitest DNA result I have ever seen.
I mean, mine's very white too, but I liked watching where my whiteness came from.
Is it as white as 63% British? I think not.
No. It is definitely not that white.
So, going back to the beginning of this story, now that we've gotten all of our racism out, it's interesting that their main concern in the beginning is starting a family in the middle of the recession. Apparently, the original drafts of the script actually had a lot more heavy-handed anti-Thatcher sentiments, too, from what I read. I'm actually really glad they toned that down in favor of the main topic, because I do think it might have taken away from the story if they tried to focus more on the politics of the time in a UK sense rather than the idea of a massive tragedy making none of it matter.
Yeah. I mean, they did have to do a little bit of that.
No, just a little.
I think they did enough. Yeah, I think they did enough. And as far as the whole, like, starting a family during a recession, I don't necessarily think they wanted to. I think that...
Oh, they didn't. No.
It was that is what people did. You know, if you got pregnant in the 80s, you either aborted the kid or you married the person for the most part. It was...
Oh, yeah, and that's the argument that Jimmy's parents made, and that Mom was like, have you considered abortion? While her little boy in the living room was playing a video game.
What's abortion?
Shut up!
Yo, speaking of that family, what happened to the daughter?
She was sent out to the grocery store before the bomb hit.
Yeah, but we see, like, they actually showed the child melting in the birdhouse.
Yeah.
But they never mentioned, and I guess that's kind of what would happen. Like, I mean, it didn't show what happened to the boyfriend either, right? He just went running off, and they both were never heard from again.
We saw white blindness. We saw that poor woman, like, peeing down her pants. We saw toys melting. Yeah. We saw charred corpses in cars. We don't have to see the specific characters to know that that's what happened. And I think it's really... The moment when they saw their son's legs poking out of that rubble was heartbreaking.
That was intense, yeah.
And his screaming right before that happened, like her hearing his death wails while she couldn't do anything. Yeah. I was in tears at that point during the film.
I was shocked and horrified. And then the fact that it showed her burst into flames was this movie really pulled no punches for what it was. Like this would have been like a BBC show. Like this would have been on at 9 p.m. on like a Thursday. Mm-hmm. And it was graphic.
Yeah.
Especially the thing that bugged me. No, not bugged me. The thing that I think might have horrified me the worst were the graphic depictions of animal corpses. Like they even showed like, there were just dead dogs and cats. Oh. And then the rats crawling under grandma's blanket and that dog fishing around there at one point. Man.
It shows you that the story of the couple is the sort of story that has all of the typical challenges you'd expect with a pair of younger lovers getting married with an unsure future, an unexpected pregnancy, and two families essentially polar opposites, except in the light of the horror that destroys their world, it just all amounts to nothing. It's a minor drama that means nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And it just sort of solidifies the whole nihilistic viewpoint that nothing really matters. Because at any moment, even now we're pushing back towards this, any moment it can all just be gone.
I think the first time the movie almost had me near tears was when they were stripping the wallpaper in their little flat, when everyone was suddenly realizing how close they were to something terrible. I really wanted to cry for that couple.
Yeah, and she fell apart.
Yeah, they were preparing for a life that they may not and didn't see. And, everything is so neatly organized and so structured in this film until the bomb hits. Everything is over for these people the minute that happens, and it all just becomes little snapshots after that.
Mm-hmm. And they did that so well, too, just the way they like, you don't know who's where, who's doing what, who's dead and who's alive, because it's chaos.
And then it just started showing photographs, snapshots. The moment when Jimmy's father had finally died, it just showed a snapshot of his body surrounded by others in the rubble. And just the horrible dehumanizing of everyone by the government, when it became just about storing food, rationing, and you only get food if you work yourself to the bone and die.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as much as I'm not a fan of the government, especially in its recent form, but we won't get into that, I do understand why they would do that. Like the things they were saying in the bunker about all right, these people get 500 calories, the workers get 1,000. That's still next to nothing. I mean, the bare minimum we're supposed to have per day is 1,200 calories.
Mm-hmm.
So 1,000 is 200 less, and 500, like they said, it's a bowl of soup. It's a sandwich, it's some bread.
Oh, and that was a really beautiful visualization, how he transitioned from describing that to just describing a feast, a fantasy of food before he lost it.
Yeah.
A treacle tot.
Yeah. But no, I completely understand why the government would. I even understand why they would shoot people that were trying to break in and the rioters and stuff. I don't like it, but I understand the need to keep order. And if there's one thing the human race has proven time and time again in times of chaos, they don't come together for the most part. I mean, you've got.
There are situations in which they do, but most of the ones we see is the ones where they don't.
Yeah, especially a world-ending event like that. People aren't going to be like, all right, we're all in this together. They're going to be like, okay, what can I take from you? And that's why we were joking earlier in the skit. Well, I was joking earlier in the skit about cannibalism and raiding people's houses. Oh, no, that's what I'm getting to. I'm not joking. I will do that. If the trappings of society no longer apply to anyone, they are certainly not going to apply to me, because I am going to take something from someone before they take it from me. So the government may have to shoot me at one point.
So long story short, listeners, if nuclear war hits and you feel like you need to go to a major city or state, avoid Pennsylvania because Corey is there and he will eat you.
Stay out of my yard.
So back to the individual character stories, I think it's interesting that they did show us one of the politicians. And, you felt bad for him when his story was singled out, the bureaucrat, the man who didn't want to leave his family to do this work, but maybe at first believed he could do something good for the world. And it all turned out to be pointless. He couldn't stop anything and he couldn't help anyone.
Yeah, I like that we saw him rather than the prime minister. Like they just gave us somebody that was, and they explained it so well too, that in times of crisis, the local governments are one person in local government is appointed to take over for that area. And it really was just some like local representative. And that would be, that would be like a, that'd be like a congressman here, probably.
Maybe not even as big as a congressman. More like a congressman.
I can't think of what's lower.
A mayor.
Yeah. It would probably be the mayor.
Yeah.
I don't even know who our mayor is.
That's okay. I don't know who my mayor is either, because we have different mayors, I think. I don't know much about the workings of American government.
Texas has different mayors.
What?
Like what your
governors?
Sorry.
Texas is a big state. There are no winners in this story. The survivors march on until they can't. The children have no hope, no future. This is hell. And there's a feeling when the credits roll that this is it's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. They do not leave any messages in the end to think that anything else is going to happen but nuclear war and suffering.
Well, that's how everybody felt back then. And England was terrified because they were in the middle of all of this. Like, it was a scary time. The Cold War was a mess.
Mm-hmm. But, I would also like to recommend a book I haven't read, but my mom has. Because when she was, this movie came out when she was like 16. She didn't see it until she was in her 20s, but she saw the day after, and she saw a lot of stuff when it came out. She was big on this nuclear war stuff, she was terrified of it and read and watched everything. She was a lot like us. But she says there's a movie called Nuclear War, What's in It for You? And it was written by the Ground Zero Fund. And it basically explains in detail everything that should happen and why you want to be dead if nuclear war ever hits. You can get it on Amazon for $2, so it's definitely worth a read.
Maybe I'll check it out.
Yeah.
I don't know though, like if I can manage to avoid the severest of the radiation, I think I could live in that world for a little while.
You are just like a man.
I would be a good person in that world, but I would. It's not even a matter that this isn't even manliness talking. This is just curiosity to actually see what the world's like when it's that collapsed.
I would hope if I was healthy that I would try to seek out the sick and the dying and give them company.
Yeah, I'd like to say I'd do something that altruistic too, but I know I wouldn't. It would be all about survival.
See, and that's why I'm going to heaven.
I'm sure. I know where I'm going when I die.
Threads is a nice reminder, though, that all horror is not just action, thriller, comedy. It's also drama. It's painful, gut-wrenching drama at its best that leaves you hollow in the end. This movie was amazing.
Yeah, it really was. It was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I just thought it was going to be some terrible after-school special, but it turned out to be pretty rough and pretty intense, yeah.
Yeah, and that being said, I did buy a copy of Blast from the Past after I watched this, and I took a hot shower.
I think that's a good idea.
If Brendan Fraser can't make you feel completely safe in this world, what can?
Well, Scott Valentine, of course.
Oh, well, oh gosh, you haven't talked about Scott Valentine in a while. Has something happened between you two?
No, I've been busy. I haven't been thinking about him as much.
Oh my gosh. I just pictured Scott Valentine bursting through the wall like the Kool-Aid Man. Oh, yeah!
Or just, like, sneaking up and hugging me from behind, softly.
Well, wait. Don't cannibalize Scott Valentine.
Oh, of course not.
Never.
No. I will bring Scott Valentine offerings of...
The bomb hits and your first thought isn't how to survive. It's like, someone must protect Scott Valentine!
Must feed Scott Valentine.
And that's going to be your story, your after the war story as you travel across the wasteland seeking out Scott Valentine, a la Saving Private Ryan.
This is perfect. I love this.
And this is going to be our fan fiction.
Oh, God.
Oh. Anyway, I think it's time to move on to a slightly lighter fare.
Yeah, a much lighter fare. To the point where I feel guilty talking about this on a horror podcast.
Well, okay, think of it like this way. If you expand on the universe concept, imagine it like this. First there's Threads, and then the movie that happens right after that is A Boy and His Dog. And then Circuitry Man, and then Hardware, and then Mind Warp.
Ooh, good, yeah.
Yeah, and I like to imagine that Vic in A Boy and His Dog is like the descendant or the ancestor of Alex in Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, I like that. That works. God, what a little sociopath that dude is, but we'll sort of get to that. So yeah, on a completely lighter note, my movie is A Boy and His Dog.
Which is weird that this is considered a light note, but I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it kind of is. I mean, it's definitely a comedy, and it's a very dark comedy, but it's a comedy nonetheless.
Charles Champlin of the Los Angeles Times says, a coherent, alternate world, kind of a funny nightmare recited as upcoming fact. It is an offbeat delight. KMET Radio, Los Angeles, gripping, horrific, a bitter vision of tomorrow, tightly controlled, compelling, bizarre, and witty. Time Magazine's Richard Schickel says, ironic, risks being absurd, yet compels respect for some witty writing and well-paced direction. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times says, wacky success, weird, offbeat, unique, magnificently inspired. Richard Eder of the New York Times says, brilliantly grotesque. The Austin Sun, this may be the best science fiction film ever made. A Boy and His Dog, a film that has become a cult legend.
Right now I'm hungry and I want to get laid.
That's what you always say.
You go find a chick and I'll hustle us up some food.
I can't do good work when I'm hungry.
You ain't pulling that crap on me again. And you can shove that part about how you lost the ability to hunt for food when you learned how to talk.
No food, no females.
After World War IV, your dog will tell you what to do.
A Boy and His Dog is basically a movie about getting laid. the apocalypse has happened, the bombs have dropped, and people have given in to their most primitive emotions. They're on a constant search for food, water, and sex. And because of this is unfortunately a very rapey movie.
So just imagine that the dead girl in the bunker at the beginning is Ruth's daughter from Threads.
Yeah, exactly. Very dark, but exactly. A very young Don Johnson plays Vic, or Albert, if you ask Blood, his telepathic dog.
Is it bad that I can't really tell the difference between Don Johnson and Leif Erikson?
Yeah, because they're both very different.
They look a lot alike.
I don't know, there's a distinct lack of headbands in Don Johnson's robe. All right, so Vic and his dog, they wander around the wasteland stealing from rovers, which are essentially this movie's version of the gay boy berserkers from The Road Warrior with a lot less personality. This is really just your stereotypical run-of-the-mill. This is basically your stereotypical run-of-the-mill wasteland bandits.
Well, it kind of, in a way, if you think about it, inspired the Mad Max concept.
Did this come first? I didn't check.
It did.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And apparently it might have been an inspiration for Fallout. That's the general consensus online.
Oh, I can very much see that, yeah.
I mean, I've had trouble finding actual references from game creators, but I mean, when you think about the fact that it's not about living through World War III, which was becoming a popular theme of its own, but the aftermath, living in the world.
Well, this was actually World War IV, wasn't it?
Well, what
this takes place after World War IV, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's a very formative film for the genre.
Yeah. All right, so the Rovers are not the most dangerous people in the wasteland. That title belongs to, well, it's sort of split, but
Vic's dog.
Yeah, pretty much. It mostly belongs to the Screamers. We never actually see them on camera, but they're most likely this radioactive, glowing, superhuman zombie type thing. There's one scene where Vic meets this girl named Quilla June Holmes, and we'll get to why she has that name sort of in a little bit. He follows her into this underground. It looks like it's an underground bunker, but it's a gymnasium. It's this big underground gymnasium, which I assume they didn't bury a gymnasium for the movie. I assume that they only could afford to use this gymnasium, so they made it look like it was underground. He follows her down there, and he's basically attempting to have his way with her when they are beset upon and surrounded by rovers. And Blood, the dog, warns him of this.
Blood, the anti-lassie.
Oh, yeah.
What's that, boy? You think I should kill my girlfriend and barbecue her limbs?
Oh, so we're ruining this too?
We're ruining all movies in this episode.
Okay. So yeah, Blood's telepathic, and he's always on the lookout, and he's keeping an eye on Vic at all times. He's sort of Vic's voice of reason. He warns Vic that these rovers are coming, and after a brief battle, Vic pretends to be one of these Screamers. And they're so scared that they run off because the Screamers are the most terrifying thing in the wasteland. Then all of a sudden, Screamers do show up. So they have to hide in this boiler, which is where Vic finally gets laid. And it is consensual at this point, so we're okay. But it's consensual because she was sent out into the world to find a virile male.
She's sent out in the world to bone down, let's be honest.
Yeah, pretty much. And to bring the dude she's boning back to this layer of underground dwellers led by
Jason Robards.
Of course. And they're wearing very strange face paint, rosy cheeks, sort of white mime makeup. I love seeing him in weird stuff, and this is definitely super weird.
Possibly inspiration for the Hunger Games, that weird character with all the makeup, maybe?
I think somebody who worked on the production of the Hunger Games probably saw this movie for sure.
I mean, you can't do a theme like that and not at least nod to A Boy and His Dog in some way.
True. These underground dwellers live in this giant underground nuclear shelter, I guess. It's so big that it has its own public park.
It's basically a soundstage.
Yeah, pretty much is exactly what it is. They live their lives as people would in this psychotic version of the 50s, where people are sent to work on the farm. as punishment for not following the status quo. Fit in or die. Or in this case, fit in or be sent to a work camp while everyone you know thinks they're dead. There's this great conversation where they're matter-of-factly discussing, okay, we're sending these two off to the farm for basically thought crimes. What do we tell their friends and family?
Somewhat reminiscent of Logan's Run with the renewal process.
Yeah, kind of, only backwards, because those people are actually dying.
Yeah.
Yeah, these people are just going to work. But matter-of-factly, they're like, oh, just say heart attacks. So this is a world where people are just believing whatever they told because they have no choice, or because I think in their minds they know that something terrible is going to happen if they don't believe what they're told.
Yeah, it's pretty much a society of sociopaths.
No, I don't know about that. I think it's run by sociopaths. I think everybody else is probably just stuck in it.
Mm-hmm.
So they recruit Vic, like I said, in the hopes that he will impregnate their women. He, of course, is super stoked about this because he thinks he's going to get to do it the old-fashioned way. But this is certainly not the case. In an underground town of painted-up weirdos, things are never what they seem. And I sort of zoned out for a minute, so I don't remember exactly what it was, but they definitely plan on essentially turning him into a human cow and just painfully taking all of his semen or
and
something like that.
They did show some of it going through a tube on the machine.
Oh, that's right, they did.
Yeah. That was a ugh moment.
So I really like this movie. This is like the third or fourth time I've seen it. But again, with all post-apocalyptic movies that I talk about, I like the world it exists in better. And we get to see a little bits of it here and there in this. There's this great scene where Vic and Blood go to this movie theater / brothel that charges cans of food in it as admission. Mm-hmm. And it's strongly hinted in this scene that most of this world can't read, but Vic can. And I think that has to do with Blood because there's a whole bunch of scenes. There are all these scenes of Blood teaching a reluctant Vic things like history and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I think chances are Blood taught him how to read, which enables him to scam the guy taking payment by convincing him that a can of beets is instead peaches. And Blood has a great line where he's like, beets are better for him anyways.
I love that they never bring into question whether or not he can really hear, whether Blood is really a telepathic dog. He just is.
Mm-hmm. And not even the actor, the other players in the film either. It's great.
Yeah, they just let it be. And sometimes that's really cool in a story because then you don't spend half an hour explaining something away and making an unneeded plot line.
Yeah, I think so. That's really what Rob Zombie screwed up in Halloween 2 is you don't need to give everything a backstory, especially something like Michael Myers.
Yeah, a slasher movie needs to be simple.
Right, exactly. So Blood is also teaching him American history, which in my head I like to think that this is to prepare him to rejoin a version of society that may happen eventually once people start to rebuild. I mean, I thought this until the end when Vic and Quilla escape the clutches of these underground dwellers and they return. Oh, I nearly forgot. To go to this underground place, he had to leave Blood behind, and Blood said he'd wait for him for a certain amount of time, but then he was gone. And it's pretty strongly hinted at that Blood's probably going to die. He's all cut up from a fight he got in, and he's very weak and he's limping. Anyway, so they escape from this underground society, and Blood is still there.
Yeah, after the most pathetic attempt at an uprising I've ever seen.
Yeah, seriously. But again, it didn't matter. Vic got out, and he's a survivor. That's what he does. So yeah, to make Blood feel better, they eat Quilla. They don't show it, but they crack all these cannibal jokes about it, and they go off on their way towards their next adventure, with parts of Quilla being saved for later to help heal Blood.
You know, I had actually read this a long time ago. I couldn't find the source now, so don't completely quote me on it. But I remember reading that the author was actually unhappy with the tone of the film. He felt that the movie was a little bit darker than the story he had written, which it was based off.
I can see that.
Yeah. That being said, I would love to see a parody of this with John and Garfield. I mean, I'd settle for Odie, I guess, but it would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, Blood is easily my favorite character in this movie. He delivers all of his lines with this tired cynicism that just feels like it comes from living in this world and seeing too much for too long. Yeah. I mean, he genuinely cares about Vic. I mean, he spends the majority of the movie trying to keep Vic alive because Vic's still a kid and has this terrible habit of making terrible decisions.
And he's an asshole.
He's an asshole, and he just runs headlong into danger without thinking. He runs off and steals a giant bag of food from the Rovers and just bolts. He doesn't even take his rifle. All that he has is his little handgun, and there's like 6 of them. But they make it out of there. It's all right. The way I figure it is Vic must occasionally listen because he's come this far, but you never see it on screen. There's not one piece of advice that Blood gives Vic that he takes.
Well, he's getting older, and obviously he's going through the changes. That make a young man more impulsive.
One of the best things about this movie is that they spend, I mean, it's called A Boy and His Dog, so obviously they're going to spend most of their relationship on the boy and his dog. But you really, really feel heartbroken when Vic chooses to go to the underground and possibly leaving this injured dog behind. And I actually kind of got mad at Vic for even like, it's acted out weird because he says he's going to come back in a certain amount of time. But if he doesn't, like, Blood's supposed to move on, and they do kind of say their goodbyes. So I don't know. It's really sad.
I feel like neither of them realized how much the other cared for them. You know, Vic didn't know how much the dog cared for him. He didn't really think the dog would stick around that long. Blood didn't realize Vic cared enough for him to really come back.
And that's why it's why I think cannibalism's a good idea, because it can really bring people together. There's nothing like a good meal that really makes people bond.
So I really think this must have been an acting challenge for Don Johnson. I mean, did they have someone calling out the dog's lines to help him keep his dialogue tempo? Or was he pretty much speaking one-sided before they added in narration?
No, that was really a telepathic dog.
Oh, wow, man, the budget on The Boy and His Dog must have all gone to that.
Yeah, I can't remember who, but there was a YouTube video that, they actually found a telepathic dog. I mean, they had to dub in his lines later, but yeah, Don Johnson's character was actually speaking to a telepathic dog.
That makes sense. Because, you know, I'm sure that telepathic dog was really popular in 80s sitcoms. Seems like it was.
Oh, they were all over the place. Yeah, Lassie was probably, I mean, they were different breeds, but they were obviously related somehow. Mm-hmm. They just never said Lassie talked because this was, the 50s, 60s, 50s?
Yeah, it would have been too controversial.
Yeah, he would have been burned as a witch.
Yeah, and it would have driven down the ratings for Mr. Ed, because who wants to see a talking horse when you can see a talking dog?
Exactly.
That being said, the music in this movie is awesome.
Yeah, it is, and I didn't really look anything up about it. Let me see who did it.
While you're looking that up, I did have one note here on my ream of notes here that just says the word kinky. I'm assuming that applies to the semen machine, because there didn't seem anything else that was kinky besides the makeup.
Yeah, probably. Music by Tim McIntyre. All right, so the guy who did the music for this is a dude who did the music for... Oh, he did the Gumball Rally. That's sort of an early Cannonball Run type of movie. He did a bunch of the music from Kung Fu, the TV series, which I really liked back in the day. Mm-hmm. That was about all I recognized. Some westerns in here, but everybody did westerns in the 60s.
Yeah, it's good. It's good music. It suits the film. Mm-hmm. Especially considering it is a low-budget film, and it's always impressive when a low-budget film has a good soundtrack.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Sometimes that'll make or break a low-budget movie, too. So the director's the last thing I'm going to briefly talk about. This guy's kind of interesting. He only directed 2 other things, an episode of the old Incredible Hulk series and a movie called The Devil's Bedroom, though he's got 163 acting credits under him, mostly character actor stuff. But I would have really liked to see him do more. I would have liked to see, because I really thought this was shot really well. It was directed really well. Mm-hmm. I guess it's hard to compare it since this was kind of the first of the genre in a way.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's possible he was doing a lot of other work that's either not credited or just not in the director's chair.
Yeah, it could be. He was in Walker, Texas Ranger. Yeah, I mean, he's got some producer credits. He's got some writer credit. 1 writer credit. He's got 3. No, he's just got 2 writer credits. So, yeah, this guy's an actor that just happened to direct a really good movie.
You know, it happens sometimes.
Yeah. So, yeah, I strongly recommend it, even though we completely blew the ending. It doesn't really mess anything up to still experience the weirdness. Like I said, it's kind of the first of its kind, but it is wildly original. A lot of post-apocalyptic stuff feels overdone.
Yeah, and I also feel that if you have over 30 years, this movie is 25 plus 18, 33. This movie is like 43 years old. If you don't know that ending by now...
Yeah. Yeah, but this is one of those movies, like, I didn't even hear about it until my friend Dave loaned me the DVD. I must have been in my mid-20s the first time I saw this, which is way behind when I should have seen it. I should have seen this in high school.
Mm-hmm. Well, both of these movies are great. Regardless of whether you know the ending, which isn't really the important part of the story, you need to watch them both if you haven't yet.
Yeah, for sure.
I would say watch Threads and A Boy and His Dog maybe on different days.
Yeah, probably different days. But definitely find something happy to watch immediately after watching Threads. Like, I don't know, I want to tell you to watch like Puppies and Babies Laughing on YouTube, but then chances are you're just going to end up in the weird part of the YouTube and you're going to find like people dancing around in mannequin heads, and I don't want that to happen to you. So read a happy book after you're done watching Threads.
Hey, did I ever tell you about the day I walked to Nevada and picked some raspberries with Jed?
Oh, I hate this guy so much, Maddie.
He's your uncle.
I know, but that doesn't mean I have to like him.
Yeah, Jed Bush. I tell you, we picked a lot of raspberries that day, and a couple of blueberries too.
Okay.
You've never left Pennsylvania. You don't know Jeb Bush. Why are we stuck here with you? I'm leaving. I'm done.
No,
I'm leaving.
Wait. Before we leave.
Unbolt this damn door.
We've got to do the credits.
Oh, fine.
If you want to find our blog, you can check us out at hallow-holic.blogspot.com or hallow-holic.wordpress.com.
You can tweet us at nowhere23 or hallow-holics at twitter.com.
You can also email us at hallow-holics@outlook.com.
And you can find us on Podpedia. Hey,
What's
Maddie,
a Podpedia?
That's a good question, Uncle Guy. Maddie, finish this because I always forget what we're supposed to say.
The portal for Podpedia is HHA.
Yes. There you go, audience. I forgot 3 letters again.
Oh, shucks, Corey. You're always forgetting them letters.
It's all the radiation. What can I say?
Hey, did I ever tell you about the time I single-handedly took on a Napoleon Bonaparte?